Sienna pushed through the door, shaking off the rain from her hair, her fingers trembling slightly as she tucked the damp strands behind her ear. She wasn't planning to stay long, just a few minutes to catch her breath, finish her edits, and leave. But then she saw her. A small girl standing near the counter, eyes wide and red from crying, her little hands gripping the edge of her dress. Something about the way she stood, so still, so lost, pulled Sienna forward before she even realized she was moving. She knelt down until her eyes met the girl's. "Hey there," she said softly, her voice careful and warm. "Are you lost?" The girl sniffled, her voice barely more than a whisper. "My daddy was just here. He said to wait. But he's not coming back. Just like Mommy." The words hit Sienna like a blow she didn't expect. Her throat tightened, but she kept her voice gentle. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Anna," she murmured. Sienna smiled faintly, though her chest ached. "Well, Anna," she said, "how about you sit with me until your daddy comes back? We can wait together." Anna hesitated, then nodded. Within moments, the tears slowed. Sienna began making up stories about the people walking by, and Anna giggled for the first time, pointing out a man in a bright yellow raincoat and calling him a banana. And just like that, for the first time in a long while, both of them forgot what it felt like to be alone. The door swung open hard enough to make everyone turn. A tall man stood there, chest rising fast, rain dripping from his coat. His eyes swept the room until they landed on the small girl beside Sienna. "Anna." The single word carried both command and relief. Anna jumped up at once. "Daddy." Sienna rose quickly as he crossed the room in long strides, scooping the child into his arms. His jaw was tight, his voice low. I turned around for 2 seconds, and she wandered off. Then, looking at Sienna, "Thank you." "She's okay," Sienna said quietly. "She was just scared." He gave a quick nod, not quite meeting her eyes, then walked out with Anna still clinging to his shoulder. The door shut behind him, leaving Sienna staring after them, her pulse unsteady for reasons she couldn't name. 3 days passed. She just sat down to work when someone knocked at her door. The sound was firm, deliberate. When she opened it, he was standing there again, Liam Cross, the man from the bakery, holding an umbrella in one hand and something unreadable in his expression. He stood in her doorway, rain still glistening on his shoulders, eyes steady but heavy with hesitation. "I know this is unexpected," he began. "Anna's birthday is next week. She refuses to celebrate unless her mother is there." Sienna frowned, confused. "But, her mother. She thinks you're her mom," he interrupted softly. "That day at the bakery, she hasn't stopped asking for you since." Sienna blinked, trying to make sense of it. "What are you saying?" He took a quiet breath. "Can you pretend to be my wife for 1 week?" The words landed like a shockwave. "You want me to be your fake wife for a 5-year-old?" "Yes." She stared at him. "That's insane. You don't know me. I don't know you. And this little girl, she only saw me once." Liam's voice dropped lower, steady but tired. "She hasn't slept through the night in months. But that day at the bakery, she did." She smiled again. "Please." Sienna turned away, arms crossed, heart racing. She wanted to say no, to close the door, to walk back into her quiet, safe life. But the sound of Anna's small, trembling voice echoed in her mind, just like Mommy. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she looked back at him, eyes uncertain but soft. "All right," she said quietly. 1 week. After that, we go back to strangers." He nodded once. Understood. Neither of them realized 1 week could change everything. The car stopped, and before Sienna could even open the door, the front entrance burst open. "Mommy!" Anna ran straight toward her, arms flung wide, her little voice breaking into a laugh that left no space for hesitation. Sienna bent down instinctively, catching her in a tight hug. For a second, nothing else existed, just the warmth of small arms clinging to her neck. When she looked up, Liam was standing a few steps away, watching quietly. His face was unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes, something between relief and restraint. Inside, the house was all order and quiet footsteps. A woman with sharp eyes and a clipboard greeted her briskly. "Mrs. Cross," she said, extending a hand. "Welcome back." Sienna took it, masking her unease behind a polite smile. "Thank you." Rebecca, Liam's assistant, studied her for a moment longer than necessary before turning to Liam. "Will Mrs. Cross be in the master suite or the guest wing?" The air felt heavier. Sienna hesitated, but Liam's voice came firm and even. "Separate rooms are fine." Rebecca nodded, though her expression barely hid her curiosity. "Of course." When she was gone, Sienna glanced at Liam. "This feels strange." He met her eyes briefly. "It will," he said. "At first." And even as she followed the quiet hallway to her room, the echo of Anna's laughter still clung to her like a promise she didn't know how to keep. The house might have been cold, but something warmer had already begun to stir beneath the silence. That night, they sat across from each other at the kitchen table, a notebook between them. Liam scrolled through a list on his phone while Sienna rubbed her temple, already overwhelmed. "So," he said, glancing up, "we met at a charity event in the city. You spilled coffee on my suit." Sienna raised an eyebrow. "Romantic." He almost smiled. "We got engaged 6 months later. You moved abroad for work last year. That's our story." "Sounds believable," she murmured, though the words felt hollow. "Do we also have a favorite memory?" He looked up again. "Maybe the time you agreed to lie to everyone I know." That earned a quiet laugh from her. "You're getting better at this." They were halfway through their fake anniversary date when a small voice interrupted them. "Can we make cookies? Like before?" Anna stood in the doorway, clutching a mixing bowl. Liam blinked. "We did that?" Sienna smiled gently. "Apparently, we did." Within minutes, the kitchen turned into chaos, flour on hands, dough on the counter, laughter spilling into corners where silence had lived too long. Anna cracked eggs with intense focus, Liam tried and failed to follow her lead, and Sienna's laughter came easier than it had in months. Later, when the cookies were cooling, Sienna tucked Anna into bed. The child clung to her hand until her breathing slowed into soft sleep. From the doorway, Liam's voice came low, careful. "She's calmer with you than I've ever seen." Sienna brushed a strand of hair from Anna's face. "I didn't know how to fake being a mom," she said quietly. "So I stopped trying." Days passed quietly, but something subtle began to shift. The stiffness between them thinned, replaced by small moments that didn't feel rehearsed. Liam no longer hid behind his work or his silence. He started showing up in ways Sienna hadn't expected, slowly, softly, almost without meaning to. In the mornings, she'd find him at the table with Anna, cutting her toast into little stars. He'd kneel down to tie her shoes, his expression focused, his movements gentle. Sienna would catch herself watching, realizing she was seeing a version of him the world probably never did, the man underneath the title, the father behind the armor. One evening, as she passed down the hall, a sound stopped her. Piano. Low, steady notes drifting through the quiet. She followed them, drawn by something she didn't understand until she saw him, Liam, seated at the grand piano, his fingers moving with precision and feeling. He didn't notice her at first. The music was beautiful, not polished like a performance, but raw, full of longing, memory, and something that ached to be known. Sienna stood there, breath caught, afraid to break the moment. When the last note faded, he looked up. Their eyes met across the room, no words, no masks, just a silent recognition of everything they were both starting to feel. What started as pretending was beginning to feel dangerously real. The days began blending together in a way that felt both easy and impossible to define. Mornings carried the sound of laughter echoing down the hall, the soft rhythm of footsteps, the clatter of dishes as they made breakfast together without needing to plan it. Evenings brought quieter things, the warmth of shared silence, the comfort of knowing someone else was there when the day was done. They moved through it like a family, though no one said the word aloud. Liam helped Anna with puzzles while Sienna cooked. Sometimes he joined her at the counter, chopping vegetables while she stirred, their movements syncing naturally. At night, she read to Anna while Liam stood by the door, and somewhere in the stillness between the words, something unspoken kept growing. It wasn't part of the story they'd created, but it felt truer than anything either of them had rehearsed. One evening, as the light dimmed, Liam's voice broke the quiet. "If this were real," he said softly, "would you stay?" Sienna froze, her breath catching. The question wasn't part of their act, it was a line from somewhere deeper. She looked down at her hands, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're getting off script," she whispered. But long after the conversation ended, the question lingered in her chest, echoing through the night. Because her heart already knew the answer she couldn't say out loud. The night of the fundraiser, Sienna walked toward Liam and Anna, her heart thudding harder than it should have. She hadn't planned to wear anything special, but the look on his face when he saw her in that burgundy dress made her forget how to breathe. For a moment, the noise of the crowd disappeared. His gaze lingered before he caught himself. "You look," he hesitated, then added quietly, "stunning." She smiled faintly. "You mean convincing." He let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "That too." Throughout the evening, they played their roles, hands brushing, smiles exchanged, quiet teamwork as they helped Anna at her little bake sale table. To everyone around them, they looked like a family that had been together for years. No one questioned it. Anna tugged at Sienna's hand and proudly told her classmates, "This is my real mommy now." The words made Sienna's throat tighten, but she only smiled and squeezed the little girl's fingers. Later, as the event slowed and the crowd thinned, Liam stood beside her, watching Anna draw with chalk on the pavement. The sound of her laughter carried through the night. "When you laugh like that," he said softly, "I forget what's real and what isn't." Sienna didn't look at him. She couldn't. Because she knew exactly what he meant. Pretend love always feels harmless, until someone starts believing it. The photo appeared online before morning. One picture, Liam, Sienna, and Anna, laughing, holding hands. It should have been innocent. But the headline twisted it into something else entirely. Liam Cross's wife, a lie. Within hours, her real name was everywhere. Sienna Blake. The stranger who had stepped into a rich man's life and pretended to be his wife. Posts spread like fire, accusations, rumors, words sharp enough to draw blood. Liam found her in his office, phone trembling in her hand, face pale. She didn't look up when he entered. "They know," she said quietly. "I can fix this," he answered. "I'll call the lawyers. The press will pull back once." "It won't matter," she cut in, her voice breaking. "Because some of it looks true. And that's enough." His brow furrowed. "It's not true." She looked at him, eyes full of something that hurt more than anger. "It feels true, Liam. I agreed to pretend. That's all I am." The words hung in the air like the sound of something shattering. Neither of them noticed Anna in the doorway until her voice cracked through the silence. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Sienna spun around. The little girl's cheeks were wet, her hands clenched tight. "I heard you," Anna sobbed. "You said you're not really my mommy." Sienna dropped to her knees, reaching for her. "Sweetheart, no. No, listen." But Anna stepped back, shaking her head. "Don't go," she whispered. "Please don't go, Mommy." The word broke her. Sienna pulled Anna close, holding her as tightly as she could. "I love you so much," she whispered into her hair, her tears falling against the child's skin. It was the truth, but it had come too late. That night, the house was too quiet. Sienna moved through it slowly, folding clothes she could barely see through her tears. Every sound, zippers, drawers, footsteps, felt final. Liam stood in the doorway, silent. He didn't ask her to stay. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe he already knew nothing he said could make it right. When the bag was closed, she looked up once, waiting for a word, a reason. None came. So she left. The door shut softly behind her, but the echo carried through every room. After that, the house changed. Anna no longer ran through the halls. Her drawings turned colorless, her laughter faded into memory. Liam buried himself in work, convincing himself she'd recover, that children were resilient. But at night, the silence pressed too hard against the walls. Then came the nightmares again. Anna woke crying, calling for someone who wasn't there. He tried reading to her, sitting by her bed, leaving lights on, but nothing helped. One stormy night, she woke shaking, her forehead hot, her cheeks flushed. Fever burned through her small body. Liam knelt beside her, panic flooding his voice. "Anna," he whispered, pressing a cold cloth to her skin. But she only murmured one word, over and over. "Mommy." "Sienna." And that was when he knew. There was only one place left to go. Rain slammed against the windshield as Liam drove, one hand gripping the wheel, the other wrapped around Anna's small body pressed against his chest. Her skin burned beneath the blanket, her breath shallow, her voice weak. "Hold on, sweetheart," he whispered, his throat tight. "Just hold on." He didn't turn toward the hospital. His hands moved on their own, guided by something stronger than reason. When he reached Sienna's building, he ran through the downpour, the world blurring around him. He rang the buzzer once. Then again. Finally, a light flicked on upstairs. The door opened, and she stood there, hair messy, eyes tired, wearing an oversized sweatshirt. Her breath caught when she saw them. Liam, drenched, trembling, Anna limp in his arms. "Sienna," he said hoarsely. "I didn't know where else to go." Without hesitation, she reached out. "Give her to me." The moment Anna fell into her arms, she sighed, a soft, broken sound of recognition. Sienna pressed her close, whispering words that calmed the storm itself. She laid her on the couch, checking her temperature, fetching medicine, her hands steady and sure. Liam stood back, dripping water onto the floor, unable to move. Watching her like a man who had finally run out of defenses. After a long silence, she looked up. "She'll be okay," she said gently. "She just needs rest." He nodded, voice cracking. "She loves you. And I don't know what to do without you." Sienna froze, tears threatening. "Liam." He stepped forward, the weight of everything he'd held in breaking all at once. Then he sank to his knees, water pooling around him, his voice a whisper. "Please, don't leave us again." Weeks later, the air carried the sound of laughter again. Soft, full, alive. Anna's birthday had come, and this time, Sienna was there, standing beneath strings of warm light, her hands busy helping Anna with the candles. From across the garden, Liam watched quietly. There was no hesitation in his gaze now, no uncertainty. Just calm, steady peace, the kind that comes after choosing what truly matters. When everyone gathered around the cake, he stepped forward, taking the mic in his hand. His voice was gentle, but it reached every heart in the yard. "I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate Anna," he said, glancing toward his daughter, who grinned proudly at the crowd. "She's the bravest little girl I know." He paused, looking at Sienna. "Some of you may not know this, but earlier this year, I asked someone for a favor. I asked her to pretend to be part of something that wasn't real. But what none of us expected was how real it became. The garden fell silent. Even the candles flickered slower, as though listening. I told her it would only be 1 week, he continued, his eyes locked on hers. Just 1 week of pretending. But 1 week wasn't enough. Not for me. Not for Anna. He took a step closer, his voice steady but full. Because 1 week wasn't enough to stop calling her the love of my life. Sienna's breath caught, her heart trembling in her chest. She didn't speak at first, couldn't. Then the words slipped out, quiet but certain. I was never pretending. For a moment, no one moved, until Anna broke the silence, bouncing on her toes, shouting, "She's really my mommy now." The crowd laughed and clapped, but Sienna only looked at Liam, and for the first time, nothing about it felt like a performance. A year later, the same garden bloomed again. Lilies lined the path, soft lights woven through the trees, the air quiet except for the sound of gentle music. Anna, now 6, moved down the aisle in a swirl of petals and laughter, her basket swinging from one hand as she tossed flowers without rhythm, too happy to care. At the end of the aisle, Sienna waited, calm, radiant, every breath trembling between disbelief and joy. Across the space, Liam sat at the piano, the same melody from that night filling the garden. Once it had sounded like loneliness. Now it carried warmth, healing, and home. When the final note faded, he stood and walked toward her. No audience existed in that moment, only the quiet heartbeat between two people who had already lived every vow they were about to make. Sienna's voice was soft but steady. From pretend to truth, she said, eyes glistening, you became home. Liam's hand tightened around hers. You were never part of the plan, he murmured, but you became everything. Anna slipped between them, her tiny fingers curling around theirs. Now I have a real mommy, she whispered, smiling up at both of them. The guests applauded, laughter and tears blending under the golden light. And as Anna's joy rang through the garden, no one noticed the faint click of a camera lens beyond the fence, one last secret waiting to surface.